The mining colony of Iron Reach floated alone at the edge of human space. It was old, noisy, and covered with dust from endless asteroid mining. Huge cargo ships arrived every day, unloading broken machines and leaving with valuable minerals. Thousands of workers hurried through the metal halls, thinking only about their next shift. No one had time to notice a lonely child sitting near a damaged loading platform. To everyone else, she was simply another forgotten face in a place where survival mattered more than kindness. The little alien girl looked no older than 8 years. Her silver skin carried faint blue markings that glowed softly under the station lights. Long white hair covered part of her frightened face, while her bright violet eyes carefully watched every person who walked by. Both of her legs were badly injured, making it impossible for her to stand. She pulled herself across the cold metal floor with her hands, trying not to cry as workers stepped around her without saying a single word. Most people believed helping strangers only created more problems. Among the busy workers was Ethan Carter, a human maintenance engineer known for fixing machines that everyone else had already given up on. He was not rich or famous. His blue work uniform was covered with oil stains, and his hands were rough from years of repairing broken engines. Ethan believed every machine deserved one more chance before being thrown away. Deep inside, he also believed people deserved the same chance, even if the galaxy often disagreed with him. As Ethan carried a heavy toolbox toward the repair bay, he noticed something unusual. A small metal container suddenly rolled across the hallway. Before anyone could stop it, the little alien girl crawled forward and caught it with both hands. She smiled weakly and handed it back to an old worker who barely looked at her before walking away. Ethan stopped where he stood. The child had helped someone who had not even thanked her. That simple moment stayed in his mind far longer than it should have. Later that evening, Ethan found the girl sitting alone beside a broken cargo robot. She was trying to repair one of its loose wires using a small piece of scrap metal. Her tiny fingers moved carefully, but every attempt ended in failure. Ethan slowly walked closer and knelt beside her. Instead of asking who she was, he gently took the damaged wire from her hands and fixed it within seconds. The robot blinked back to life, causing the girl to smile for the first time that day. It was a small smile, but it carried more hope than anything Ethan had seen in weeks. "My name is Ethan," he said with a friendly voice. The little girl looked at him for a moment before speaking very softly. "My name is Lyra." Her English sounded strange, as if she had learned it from old station computers. Ethan noticed fresh scratches on her hands and small bruises on her arms. They told a story that words never could. He asked where her family was, but Lyra quietly lowered her head. After several seconds of silence, she whispered that she did not remember. She only remembered waking up alone on a cargo ship many years ago. Ethan felt something heavy inside his heart. He had repaired thousands of machines during his life, but he had no idea how to repair the pain inside a lonely child. As Lyra tried to move away, her damaged legs refused to obey. She struggled to crawl only a few feet before falling against the cold floor again. Several workers looked at her, shook their heads, and continued walking. One even muttered that aliens always brought trouble wherever they went. Ethan watched silently as Lyra forced herself to smile despite the pain. She acted as if she had already accepted that crawling would always be her future. That quiet acceptance hurt Ethan more than any scream could have. He helped her sit comfortably beside the wall and gave her a warm meal from his own lunchbox. She thanked him politely, eating slowly as though every bite was precious. Ethan noticed she never complained about her condition, not even once. That night, Ethan could not sleep. Inside his small room, pieces of broken machines covered every table. Half-finished repair projects filled every corner, but his mind kept returning to Lyra. He opened old engineering files and searched through forgotten medical technology used by human rescue teams. Most designs were expensive military equipment, far beyond anything he could afford. Still, one idea refused to leave his thoughts. If soldiers could wear powered Exo-Legs to carry heavy loads, perhaps a smaller version could help one little girl walk again. The next morning, Ethan visited the station junkyard before his work shift began. Rusted metal, damaged servos, broken sensors, and discarded power cells were piled everywhere. Other workers laughed as they watched him collect pieces that looked completely useless. One mechanic joked that Ethan was building another pile of junk. Ethan simply smiled and continued searching. He was not looking for treasure. He was looking for hope, hidden inside broken parts. For the next several days, Ethan spent every free hour working inside his tiny repair shop. Sparks filled the air as welding tools flashed through the darkness. Small motors were tested again and again until they moved smoothly. Tiny support frames were reshaped dozens of times because they had to fit a child's body perfectly. Every mistake taught Ethan something new. Every success brought him one step closer to an impossible dream that no one else believed could happen. One evening, Lyra quietly entered the workshop. She looked at the strange metal frame resting on Ethan's workbench. Her curious eyes followed every wire and every tiny motor. She finally asked him what he was building. Ethan looked at her with a warm smile before answering, "I'm building something that might help you walk." Lyra stared at him in complete silence. For the first time in many years, hope slowly returned to her eyes. Yet neither of them noticed the small glowing symbol hidden beneath the metal frame. It pulsed only once before disappearing again, as though some distant force had finally discovered exactly where the forgotten child had been hiding. The next morning, Ethan arrived at his workshop long before sunrise. The station was unusually quiet, and only the sound of distant mining drills echoed through the empty corridors. He placed the unfinished Exo-Legs on his workbench and carefully checked every wire, bolt, and power cell once again. He knew this project could not fail. It was not just another machine waiting to be repaired. It was the chance to give one small child a future she had almost stopped believing in. Lyra arrived a few minutes later, carrying a small box filled with tiny screws and metal clips she had collected from the junkyard. She proudly placed the box on the table and smiled at Ethan. Although she could not stand, she wanted to help in every way she could. Ethan thanked her warmly and gave her simple tasks, like sorting parts and holding small tools while he worked. The workshop felt different now. It no longer seemed like a lonely repair room. It felt alive with hope. As the hours passed, the Exo-Legs slowly took shape. Ethan carefully connected lightweight support frames to tiny electric motors that could copy natural leg movement. Every joint had to move smoothly, and every sensor had to react instantly. He explained each step to Lyra using simple words, making her laugh whenever a tiny motor suddenly jumped across the table during testing. Those small moments of happiness made the long hours feel worthwhile. Outside the workshop, however, not everyone supported Ethan's idea. Several workers stopped by during their lunch break just to watch him. One man shook his head and laughed. He said Ethan was wasting valuable station parts on an alien who would probably leave one day. Another worker claimed the child would never walk again, no matter what kind of machine Ethan built. Their words filled the room with doubt. But Ethan never answered. He simply continued tightening another bolt and testing another circuit. After the workers left, Lyra quietly looked down at the floor. She had heard every cruel word. Ethan noticed the sadness on her face and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. He told her that people often laughed at impossible ideas because they were afraid to believe in them. Machines were never built by people who listened to every negative voice. They were built by people who refused to quit. Lyra listened carefully, and her small smile slowly returned. That evening, Ethan finished the first complete prototype. The silver metal frame was light enough for a child to wear, while tiny blue lights glowed along the support joints. It was far from perfect, but it was strong enough for its first test. Ethan carefully helped Lyra into the Exo-Legs, adjusting every strap until they fit comfortably around her legs and waist. His hands trembled slightly because he knew this moment could change everything. He activated the small power cell. Soft mechanical sounds filled the room as the motors slowly came to life. The support braces gently lifted Lyra from the chair. For the first time in many years, she was standing. Her eyes grew wide with surprise as she looked down at the floor far below her. Ethan stayed close, ready to catch her if she fell. Lyra took a deep breath and carefully tried to move one foot forward. The first step failed. The motors lost balance and she almost fell before Ethan caught her safely. Lyra looked disappointed, but Ethan simply smiled. He told her every great invention failed many times before it succeeded. Failure was only another lesson. Together, they adjusted the balance settings and reduced the motor speed. Then they tried again. This time, Lyra lifted her right foot, then her left. One slow step, another careful step. Soon she was walking across the workshop, holding Ethan's arm for balance. Tears filled her eyes as she looked around the room from a standing position. She had forgotten what the world looked like when seen from eye level. Ethan watched quietly, happier than he had been in years. For him, that simple walk was worth more than all the money in the galaxy. Unknown to both of them, hidden security cameras recorded everything. Deep inside the station's communication center, an old artificial intelligence automatically detected the strange glowing symbol inside the Exo-Legs. It immediately compared the energy signature with records that had remained classified for nearly 20 years. Within seconds, a silent emergency signal was transmitted far beyond human space. Millions of kilometers away, a massive black battleship received the encrypted message. The bridge crew froze as ancient royal symbols suddenly appeared across every screen. The ship's commander stared at the report with disbelief before immediately standing. "The princess has been found," he whispered. Without another word, he ordered the entire fleet to change course. Back on Iron Reach Station, Ethan and Lyra celebrated her first successful steps. Neither of them noticed the stars outside the station beginning to disappear one by one. They were not vanishing. They were being covered by enormous warships emerging from hyperspace. And at the center of that unstoppable fleet traveled someone whose arrival could change the fate of the entire galaxy forever. The celebration inside Ethan's small workshop lasted only a few minutes before the entire mining colony suddenly shook beneath everyone's feet. A loud emergency siren echoed through every hallway, and flashing red lights covered the station in an uneasy glow. Workers immediately stopped what they were doing and looked toward the giant observation windows. Even the oldest engineers had never heard this level of emergency alarm before, and fear quickly spread across every corner of Iron Reach Station. Outside the station, the peaceful starfield had completely changed. One after another, enormous warships emerged from hyperspace without making a single attack. Their black metal hulls reflected the light of distant stars, making them look like moving mountains in space. Within only a few minutes, hundreds of giant vessels surrounded the colony in perfect formation. Every ship carried the same shining silver emblem that nobody on the station recognized, yet everyone understood one thing. Whoever owned that fleet possessed unbelievable power. The station commander rushed into the control room while officers shouted reports from every direction. Long-range scanners failed to count the exact number of battleships because new ones continued arriving every few seconds. Defensive cannons were activated. Fighter pilots climbed into their ships and evacuation shelters were opened across the colony. Nobody knew whether these visitors had come as friends or enemies, but no one wanted to risk waiting for the answer. Inside the workshop, Ethan looked through the window with growing concern. He had never seen a fleet large enough to block out the stars themselves. Lyra also stared outside, but her reaction was completely different. Instead of looking surprised, she looked frightened. Her hands began to shake, and the small smile she had worn after taking her first steps disappeared completely. Ethan quietly noticed the fear in her eyes and gently asked if she knew anything about the arriving ships. For several long seconds, Lyra remained silent while staring at the fleet outside. Finally, she whispered in a voice so soft that Ethan almost failed to hear her. She said she had seen that silver symbol once before, but she could not remember where. Every time she tried to think about it, painful flashes appeared inside her mind. Strange faces, burning cities, loud explosions, and a woman crying while reaching toward her all appeared for only a second, before disappearing again. Ethan carefully helped Lyra sit down before the memories became too painful. He gave her a glass of water and calmly told her not to force herself to remember. Sometimes the mind protected painful memories until the right moment arrived. Lyra nodded slowly, but she continued looking toward the window as if someone outside was searching only for her. Deep inside, she felt something she could not explain. It was not only fear, it was also a strange feeling of familiarity. Meanwhile, the station commander finally received a communication request from the mysterious fleet. Every screen inside the control room suddenly turned black, before displaying a silver royal crest Surrounded by glowing stars, a calm but powerful voice filled the room, ordering every weapon on the station to remain inactive. The unknown speaker declared that they had not come to conquer the colony. They were searching for someone precious who had been missing for many years. The commander demanded to know who they were searching for, but the voice refused to answer directly. Instead, it sent a strange energy signature to the station's computers. Within seconds, every scanner began searching every hallway, every cargo bay, and every living area for a perfect match. Hidden deep inside Ethan's workshop, the small glowing symbol beneath Lyra's Exo-Legs suddenly became active once again. Soft blue light spread through the metal frame before disappearing into the station's communication network. A warning immediately appeared inside the control room. The computers had found a perfect match. The signal was coming from a small repair workshop located near the engineering sector. The commander stared at the screen in complete confusion because the location belonged to one ordinary human maintenance engineer. Before he could send security officers, dozens of elegant landing ships separated from the massive fleet and headed directly toward the station. Only minutes later, the heavy doors of Iron Reach Station slowly opened. Hundreds of tall alien soldiers stepped inside with perfect discipline, wearing bright silver armor decorated with glowing blue lines. They carried advanced weapons that looked far beyond human technology, yet none of them pointed their rifles at civilians. Instead, every soldier calmly marched toward the engineering section, while their commander silently followed behind them. Workers quickly moved aside as the mysterious soldiers passed through the crowded hallways. Fear filled every face because nobody knew what would happen next. Some believed the colony had been invaded. Others whispered that an ancient empire had returned after centuries of silence. Ethan heard the footsteps growing closer outside his workshop and instinctively stood in front of Lyra. He did not know who these strangers were, but he had already decided that nobody would harm the little girl while he was still standing. The workshop door slowly opened without a sound. The armored commander entered first, followed by several elite guards. His glowing helmet carefully scanned the room before stopping on Lyra. For a brief moment, complete silence filled the workshop. Ethan expected the soldiers to arrest her or take her away by force. Instead, something happened that nobody inside the room could have imagined. The commander immediately removed his helmet, lowered himself onto one knee, and bowed his head with complete respect. Every soldier behind him did exactly the same without saying a single word. Their powerful weapons remained lowered while the commander spoke with deep emotion in his voice. He addressed the frightened little girl with words that froze Ethan where he stood. "Your Highness, after 12 years of searching, we have finally found you." The workshop became completely silent after the commander's words echoed through the room. Ethan looked from the kneeling soldiers to Lyra, expecting her to deny everything. Instead, the little girl stood frozen in place, her violet eyes filled with confusion and fear. She looked at the commander as though she wanted to recognize him, but every memory remained hidden behind a wall inside her mind. The title, "Your Highness," sounded completely unfamiliar to her. The commander slowly raised his head, careful not to frighten the child. His eyes were filled with relief after years of searching across countless star systems. He spoke gently, explaining that the entire galaxy had believed she was gone forever. Hundreds of rescue fleets had searched dangerous regions of space, abandoned planets, and pirate strongholds without finding a single clue. Today, after 12 long years, their mission had finally come to an end. Lyra quietly stepped backward until she was standing beside Ethan. She held his arm tightly, searching for comfort in the only person she truly trusted. Her breathing became faster as strange memories flashed through her mind again. She saw a beautiful palace, shining gardens, and a woman with long silver hair smiling warmly at her. Before she could remember anything more, the painful images disappeared once again, leaving only tears in her eyes. Ethan gently placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder and looked directly at the commander. He calmly asked for the truth because the child deserved clear answers instead of mysterious titles. The commander respected Ethan's courage and introduced himself as General Kalor, the highest military officer of the Royal Celestial Empire. He explained that Lyra was not an ordinary child. She was Princess Lyra Valeris, the only daughter of the most powerful ruler in the known galaxy. Every worker who had gathered outside the workshop gasped after hearing those words. They had spent years walking past the little girl without giving her a second glance. Some had ignored her, while others had spoken cruelly about her simply because she was different. Now they discovered that the child they had treated so poorly was a royal princess, whose disappearance had shaken an entire galactic civilization. Shame quietly spread across many faces. General Kahlor continued explaining the terrible events of 12 years earlier. During an official journey, the royal convoy had been attacked by a massive pirate fleet hiding inside a dangerous nebula. The battle lasted only a few minutes, but it changed history forever. In the middle of the chaos, the princess's escape pod was separated from the royal ships and disappeared into deep space. Despite endless searches, no one ever found the pod or its young passenger. The commander then revealed something even more surprising. The escape pod had crashed near an old trading route where illegal scavengers often searched for valuable technology. Someone had secretly rescued the child, but erased every clue that could reveal her identity. Without memories and without anyone knowing her true name, Lyra had eventually been passed from one cargo ship to another until she arrived at Iron Reach Station. From that day forward, she had lived as an ordinary forgotten orphan. Lyra listened carefully, but none of the story felt completely real. She looked at her own hands, trying to imagine herself as a princess. Everything she remembered involved cold metal floors, broken machines, and lonely nights inside the station. Royal palaces, giant fleets, and powerful empires felt like stories from another person's life. She quietly asked the commander why she could not remember any of it if everything he said was true. General Kahlor explained that the escape pod had suffered severe damage during the attack. The emergency system had protected her life, but the impact caused a serious memory disorder. The Empire's best doctors had always feared that if she survived alone, her memories might remain hidden for many years. They believed familiar people or familiar places could slowly bring those memories back. That was why they had never stopped searching, no matter how impossible the mission became. While everyone focused on Lyra, one of the royal engineers noticed the advanced Exo-Legs attached to her body. He carefully examined the design from a distance before looking at General Kahlor with visible surprise. The engineer explained that the device was not based on royal technology. It had been built entirely from simple mining equipment, old station parts, and human engineering ideas. Even more surprising, the design solved several balance problems that had challenged royal scientists for years. General Kahlor turned toward Ethan with a new expression on his face. Until that moment, he had believed the human was only a station mechanic who had happened to find the missing princess. Now he realized Ethan had done something much greater. Without advanced laboratories, unlimited funding, or military engineers, he had created technology that allowed the princess to stand and walk again. Such an achievement demanded respect even from the greatest empire in the galaxy. Before the commander could speak, every light inside the workshop suddenly dimmed. A powerful vibration traveled through the station as every screen switched to the same live transmission. Outside the observation windows, the largest ship anyone had ever seen slowly appeared from hyperspace. It was nearly the size of a small moon, surrounded by thousands of escort vessels flying in perfect formation. The entire royal fleet immediately changed position and saluted the enormous flagship. General Kahlor straightened his uniform and lowered his head once again. His voice carried both respect and nervousness as he quietly announced that the ruler of the Celestial Empire had arrived in person. He explained that only one individual possessed the authority to command a fleet of that size. She had crossed half the galaxy the moment she learned her daughter had been found. Every soldier inside the station immediately stood at attention. Lyra stared through the window as the giant flagship filled the darkness of space. For reasons she could not explain, tears slowly rolled down her cheeks before anyone had spoken a single word. Deep inside her heart, a forgotten feeling had finally awakened. Someone was coming for her. Someone she had loved long before she had forgotten her own name. And within only a few minutes, the most powerful mother in the galaxy would walk through the doors of Iron Reach Station. The enormous royal flagship remained completely still outside Iron Reach Station, yet its presence alone made the entire colony feel smaller than ever before. Thousands of escort ships formed perfect circles around it, creating a shield that stretched across the stars. Every civilian stood silently near the observation windows, unable to look away from the unbelievable sight. Many workers had spent their entire lives in space, but none of them had ever witnessed a fleet powerful enough to darken the sky itself. Inside the station, every hallway was cleared within minutes. Royal guards took their positions with perfect discipline while human security officers quietly stepped aside. No one argued with the orders because everyone understood that history was unfolding before their eyes. Even the station commander stood respectfully near the main docking bay, waiting to welcome the mysterious ruler whose name alone was known throughout the galaxy. The air felt heavy with anticipation. A massive golden shuttle slowly separated from the flagship and moved toward the station without any fighter escort. It needed no protection because every ship in the fleet was ready to sacrifice itself if necessary. As the shuttle entered the docking bay, complete silence filled the enormous chamber. Workers, engineers, doctors, and security officers all stood perfectly still. The only sound came from the shuttle's engines as they slowly powered down. The landing ramp lowered with graceful precision. Soft white light poured from inside the shuttle before a tall woman stepped onto the metal floor. She wore elegant silver robes decorated with glowing blue patterns that seemed to move like living stars. A beautiful crystal crown rested above her long silver hair, while calm violet eyes quietly observed everyone around her. She carried no weapon, yet her presence alone felt stronger than an entire army. Every royal soldier immediately lowered themselves onto one knee. Even General Kaylor bowed his head without hesitation. Human officers looked at each other in surprise before respectfully following the same gesture. They had never met the ruler of the Celestial Empire, but one glance was enough to understand why billions of citizens trusted her. Her strength did not come from fear. It came from quiet confidence that filled every corner of the room. Queen Seraphina did not waste a single second speaking to generals or commanders. The moment her eyes found Lyra standing beside Ethan, every royal rule and formal ceremony disappeared from her mind. She walked forward faster and faster until she finally reached her daughter. Without caring who was watching, she wrapped both arms around the little girl and held her tightly against her chest. For several moments, neither of them spoke a single word. Tears slowly rolled down the queen's face as she gently touched Lyra's hair, cheeks, and hands, almost as if she feared her daughter might disappear again. Lyra remained frozen at first because her memories were still incomplete. However, the warmth of the embrace felt strangely familiar. Deep inside her heart, forgotten emotions slowly began returning, even though her mind still struggled to remember. The queen softly whispered stories from Lyra's childhood that no stranger could possibly know. She spoke about bedtime songs, small adventures inside the royal gardens, and the funny names Lyra had given to the palace animals when she was only 4 years old. As each memory reached her ears, tiny pieces of the past slowly returned. They were still broken and unclear, but they were enough for Lyra to realize one important truth. This woman truly was her mother. Lyra suddenly hugged the queen as tightly as she could. Both of them cried together while everyone around them quietly looked away to give them privacy. Even the strongest soldiers struggled to hide their emotions. General Kaylor had dreamed of witnessing this reunion for 12 long years. But the real moment was even more powerful than he had imagined. Hope had finally replaced years of sorrow. After several minutes, Queen Seraphina gently wiped the tears from Lyra's face and smiled with endless love. As she carefully helped her daughter stand, her attention suddenly moved toward the silver Exo-Legs supporting Lyra's body. The queen slowly knelt down and examined every joint, every support frame, and every tiny motor. Her expression changed from curiosity to complete astonishment. She had never expected such technology to be built from ordinary station equipment. She quietly asked General Kaylor who had created the device. Without saying a word, the general respectfully turned toward Ethan. Every pair of eyes inside the docking bay followed him at the same moment. Ethan suddenly found himself standing alone before the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. He remained calm, even though everyone else expected him to feel overwhelmed by the situation. The Queen slowly walked toward Ethan with measured steps. Her royal guards watched every movement carefully, but she raised one hand, silently ordering them to remain where they were. When she finally stood before the human engineer, she carefully studied his oil-stained work clothes and rough hands. These were not the hands of a famous scientist or wealthy inventor. They were the hands of an ordinary worker who spent every day repairing broken machines. Queen Seraphina gently asked Ethan why he had built the Exo-Legs for a child he did not know. Ethan answered honestly without searching for impressive words. He explained that when he saw Lyra crawling across the cold station floor, he stopped thinking about whether she was human or alien. He only saw a lonely child who deserved the chance to stand on her own feet. Helping her simply felt like the right thing to do. The Queen remained completely silent after hearing his answer. Around her stood brilliant scientists, experienced engineers, powerful admirals, and respected advisors. Yet none of them had given her daughter what one ordinary human mechanic had offered, without expecting anything in return. It was not advanced technology that impressed her the most. It was simple kindness. Before the Queen could say another word, every alarm across the station suddenly screamed to life once again. Emergency lights flashed red as frightened officers rushed into the docking bay. One of them reported that an unknown fleet had just entered the system from the dark side of the asteroid belt. Unlike the Royal Fleet, these ships were charging their weapons before anyone had even attempted communication. Someone had learned the lost princess had finally been found, and they had come to make sure she disappeared forever.